This quarter, Dr. Sharon Collingwood, a lecturer in the Women's Studies Department, is teaching a class completely on Minerva Island in the interactive, online, virtual world of Second Life, a universe populated by avatars created by individual users. Collingwood has been using Second Life in her classes since spring of 2006, but now, she says, I only know my students by their avatars.
That's the way I like to use Second Life, in small groups. People go off and work on things together. And my ideal of a classroom is a class that works itself. So the teacher's just there. The teacher's there to guide and put stuff in, but the teacher's not there to teach.
Right.
So, if it works, when I finally get it to be working, it's a different kind of education. I mean, what they say about it is it's not the mage on the stage, it's the guide on the side, if you want. I've had really shy students. I taught this once where it was a split class, where I had them in class and then I had them in lab. And my shy student, she was so shy that she actually used shy as part of her name. I'm the shy person in class, who said to me she'd never talked so much in class before. And it was because she talked, there's something about Second Life that encourages those kinds of people. And it's impossible for the other kind of people, the people who like to dominate the whole class and talk and talk and talk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they can't do that. They just can't do it because the students will just go to instant message, just sort of accidentally forget to respond.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not impolite. So there's a whole different social dynamic in there. It's when there are so many other ways of undermining that. In a classroom situation, you have somebody who can dominate. You don't get the people. People can kind of give each other the look,
Right.
about what you're doing. But they can't actually talk, they can't actually talk back in the same way, where in Second Life they can actually instant message the other person saying, who is this doob? And they can also undermine what that person is doing by talking in text chat. Because I've taught you regular distance learning, and it's, to me, distant, the regular kind. You read the stuff, and you go on the message board, and you say something about it. And generally what at least a third of them are saying is, oh, that was an interesting reading that we had. I was very interested in it, and what you said about it was so interesting. It was a very nice thing you said, so interesting. And that's their comment. A lot of them are doing that sort of stuff. A lot of them don't really engage. And then there's like 5 or 6 who are really engaged, right? And they're talking, and you can get flame wars and stuff on the... think that can be undermined or lessened in Second Life, and that people, well, if they hear the voice, for example, if you are able to use your voice, that makes a big difference. And again, the group mediates it. Well, I was thinking about multitasking in my regular class, actually, because we have presentations in there. And when we have presentations, there's 2 people who lead the discussion. And I'm supposed to just sort of let them lead and maybe chip in, but I don't want to be the head, So I said, well, look, if you're going to be doing this, why don't I, being as we have an electronic classroom, why don't I comment on what's going on in the group discussion? And this comes right out of Second Life. It's sort of a classroom point 2 thing that's going on there. Yes. And well, I just found what was interesting about that, doing that in classroom, was that it was just natural. It wasn't like, oh, I've got this great idea. It just, oh, hey, we'll do this. Which means that at some level, this kind of use of digital media has changed the way I teach. Mm-hmm. It's just, or even you might argue the way I think. There's a lot of talk in our class about disability. Mm-hmm. What disability really means. A student is in the library and can't use their headphones, so they have to participate in class, in discussion, only in chat. People have a tendency not to listen to them quite so much, It becomes the subtext instead of, what does that mean? Well, what would that mean if you were deaf? And then body image, too. Make somebody go around 30 pounds overweight, or 30 pounds underweight, or blonde. One of my students is experimenting with being different kinds of a female. This week, last couple of weeks, he's been a witch. I don't say anything, like I'm going to talk about it at the end of class, but just see who experiments and who doesn't. There are some people who come into Second Life, and they take a form, and they assume that form, and that's the form. Then there are other people who come in and they want to be, a dragon, and they want to look at all different parts of their personality. I just find that interesting. Some do, some don't. No, I'm not saying that the women's community is using Second Life, because they're not yet. Well, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. The academic community of women, as far as I can see, is not really interested in it, in women's studies. But when you go into Second Life, there are groups on harassment, there are groups on counseling, there are therapy groups, all sorts of groups of women artists, women, using Second Life to express themselves in art and in different ways. So, and actually, when you look at Second Life, it's right now, I think it's 45% women, which is huge. Yeah. Well, I think it's just starting to be explored. I mean, everywhere, in all the disciplines. I mean, at the university level, there's only one other person who's doing anything on women's studies in Second Life. I haven't found anybody else who's doing things like that. I think the sociologists, maybe the economists, are starting to dip their toe in the water, because Second Life is an economy. It's a little microeconomy.
Right.
You make something, you might want to sell it, you put a price on it, and the Linden dollar is about 275 of them to the American dollar. It goes up and it goes down, and they can fiddle with trying to figure out why, and students in economics are starting to do that. There's all sorts of different disciplines that are finding uses for Second Life. Well, this is a grant, continuing education grant, to develop a course for continuing education. So the grant pays, a teaching salary, and it pays for the island. What I'm doing now is my research is on pedagogy, how pedagogy works, and another concurrent thread would also be activism. How did this work for women's activism? So those are the two. I don't do any really deep. I mean, my women's studies, my academic interests are women in the medieval period, which doesn't really fit into Second Life very much.